friends, colleagues, honored guests, it is with much appreciation this morning that I recognize the ASSIST project as another milestone in our common work. ASSIST is dedicated to the well-being of migrant women who are victims of trafficking in human beings. It improves their access to rights and enhances integration opportunities. The Immigrant Council of Ireland has been delighted to coordinate this important project. We have always approached human trafficking as a gendered phenomenon. Our independent law center provides holistic, gender-specific, and trauma-sensitive legal assistance and representation to trafficked migrant women, while our trafficking coordination and research team pursues collaborative and innovative work and keeps us abreast of the latest advances on anti-trafficking in the EU and beyond. By now, there is an abundance of research evidence that demonstrates the gendered nature of human trafficking. This includes its cost to our society as a whole, and especially to the individual lives of women and girls. The ASSIST project is dedicated to such women who are affected by those most heinous forms of exploitation, including those involving sexual violence. Their migration journey to and through the European Union has been marred by this violence and exploitation. With the help of civil society and other support services in the member states, we seek to achieve recovery and reintegration. This project would not have been possible without the funding programs of the European Union, particularly the Asylum, Migration, and Integration Fund. EU anti-trafficking funding streams provide a vital and much needed lifeline to civil society organizations like the ASSIST partners. These funds enable us to provide dedicated assistance to victims of trafficking in human beings. They also help us to learn and exchange best practices among the partnering member states. We are delighted to have partnered on the ASSIST project with the leading feminist service providers across the European Union. These include BeFree in Italy, JustRight Scotland, SOLWODI in Germany, SURT in Spain, and the European Network of Migrant Women, both in Belgium and across the Union. Together, we were able to distill and define best practice principles. The area of gender-specific assistance to trafficked third country national migrant women has improved as a result. And I'm confident that these tried and tested practical principles will have a meaningful and positive impact on the operation of the civil society organizations around the EU that specialize in assistance of trafficked migrant women. Finally, I would like to express my continued appreciation and admiration for the survivors of human trafficking who participated in this project as recipients of services, but also, more importantly, as advisors in our work and as inspirations for our efforts. The women we work with in this difficult area are often defined in law and policy as victims. They are also survivors, and they are some of the strongest and most inspirational women we have ever had the opportunity to work with and support. As I now declare this conference open, may I ask that you join me in acknowledging the strength and importance of these women. Thank you.
I would like to thank the organizers of this event, organizations who contributed to this work, coordinated the project, experts who worked together, the Immigrant Council of Ireland, funders, and of course, all speakers today, people who are attending our panel, and especially women survivors of trafficking and prostitution. As presented by Dr. Roja, it's essential today to have this type of project with concrete facts and evidence, allowing to align best practices for the support of women victims of human trafficking for sexual exploitation, to listen to survivors in order to be able to better support victims. These women supported in programs to exit prostitution often become women engaged in feminist organizations to help other victims. And before giving the floor to experts, I would like to raise 2 points from the level of the European Network of Migrant Women. First of all, this violence primarily affects migrant girls and women. They are victims of this exploitation by taking advantage of their vulnerability and their situation. Sexual exploitation affects those women because they are women and because of their migrant status. It's an exploitation of their administrative, economic, and social situation. This is why today migrant women are not safe from this violence, and the COVID crisis has demonstrated it. Migrant women finding themselves without work, without documents, or homeless in Europe quickly become victims of sexual exploitation by traffickers, pimps, and aggressors who take advantage of their precarious and vulnerable situation. Therefore, it's not only a question of trafficking for sexual exploitation of migrant women, and it should not be treated as an isolated issue and separated from other forms of violence. These women are victims of sexual, psychological, and physical violence. So it's a form of violence against women, and it's essential to understand the phenomenon of violence against women, the vulnerability of migrant women, in order to be able to fight as best as possible against this practice and to better support victims. These women are above all victims of violence committed because of their sex. It's an exploitation and commodification of women because they are women. This means that fighting against trafficking for sexual exploitation should be based on a feminist analysis to provide means of combating this practice as a violence based on the sex. This is why my second and last point is to clarify that today, as European Network of Migrant Women, we support, ask, and demand that these women be accompanied by specialized feminist associations, by experts and professionals who support women victims of violence. We ask to support and fund these organizations who provide services for women victims of violence, including women victims of trafficking. These women cannot be supported by non-specialized organizations under the guise of gender neutrality. And today, this misinterpretation of the principle of equality in access to rights and services is problematic for victims. For the interest of women victims of human trafficking for sexual exploitation and women victims of violence more generally, we need this specialized feminist association, independent feminist services for an appropriate support and a better reconstruction of women. We cannot and will not achieve equality between sex if we do not support women in an appropriate and specific way. Thanks again to all experts, organizations, and women who worked on this project, and all feminists who are defending every day migrant women and girls' rights. Thank you.
I'm glad to contribute to this seminar on the survivor perspective. My name is Malaika Oringo. I'm a founder of Footprint to Freedom, a survivor-led organization. I am an educator and a mentor, an advocate for victims' rights, but most of all, I'm a survivor of human trafficking. As a migrant woman survivor of human trafficking, I would like to shed a light on how better to assist migrant female survivors, especially those of sex trafficking, and the challenges they encounter. It's very important when supporting survivors of sex trafficking to think beyond offering basic needs, because female survivors face specific gender and culture challenges, which require gender-specific solutions. But what I've observed in integration programs is that there is one size that fits all. This undermines the specific problems and challenges that sex victims of human trafficking face, like stigma, taboos, and health issues that come with exploitation, such as HIV/AIDS or carrying pregnancies from pimps or during exploitation. Therefore, there's need to have a holistic approach that is culture-centered, trauma-informed, and at the same time, it should engage survivors in the process of integration. Additionally, there's a difference between labor trafficking and sex trafficking. At the same time, there's a difference between the experience of men victims of human trafficking and female victims of human trafficking. What I've noticed that today is for migrant victim of human trafficking, the assistance duration is conditional, discriminating, and limited. In most countries, the duration of assistance offered to victims is linked to ongoing investigation and when the trafficker is prosecuted, which enables termination of rights when the investigation is finished. This termination of rights leads to re-victimization of survivors of human trafficking. It causes re-traumatization. At the same time, it exposes women to gender-based violence. I know this by experience. I was stripped of my rights when my investigation ended. I was just a minor at that time, but when I became 18, the right to shelter, housing, financial, medical was all stripped from me for over 10 years. This put me at the verge of being re-trafficked, at the same time exposed to gender-based violence, especially as a minor. At the same time, it exposed me to substance abuse. And this is to those working directly with migrant survivors of human trafficking. I'd like to remind you that working with survivors is a long-term investment. There's no quick fix. This is, for example, seen when working with sex trafficking survivors. They are traumatically bonded by their traffickers. Therefore, they tend to move back and forth before they eventually set themselves free. However, what I noticed that donors and shelter owners do not have the patience. Hence, they give up on them very soon, which undermines the fact that this back and forth is precisely what it takes for a survivor or a victim to get over the trafficking experience. And this calls for more migrant survivor-led peer-to-peer mentorship. And lastly, I'll call more for migrant authentic inclusion and engagement that codifies survivor roles and responsibilities. What I see to most organizations, migrant survivors are just a currency for donations, marketing, and being the face of raising awareness. The most common practice of engagement is when a survivor is invited as an additional rather than an embedded approach, where she's part of the group as an employee or a person who deserved a paid check. Having gotten that out of my chest, I would like to put forward some few questions to organizations, institutions, and businesses to check how survivor-informed are you as an organization. The question goes, how many migrant survivors of human trafficking work in your organization as paid employees? And what have you done to overcome these barriers that hinder migrant survivor inclusion? And as a government institution, how many women survivors are on your institution boards as advisory to advise on how to distribute sensitive programs for women and victims of human trafficking? These questions are crucial if we are to assist migrant survivors of sex trafficking. In other words, we cannot claim to support and assist migrant women survivors of human trafficking if they are not at the center of our organization works. Thank you.